Welcome back to Summary Central. Let me start with a number that might make you slightly uncomfortable. 4,000. That's it. That's roughly how many weeks you get if you live to about 80 years old. No bonuses, no hidden levels, no secret expansion pack if you do really well at productivity. 4,000 weeks. And the bad news is you've already spent a bunch of them. Possibly a worrying number of them. Possibly too many of them scrolling, stressing, optimizing, and telling yourself you'll start living properly once things calm down. Oliver Burkeman wrote 4,000 Weeks for people who feel constantly behind in life. People who keep thinking that one day they'll finally get on top of things. People who secretly suspect that productivity culture promised them freedom and delivered anxiety instead. And here's the comforting part. You are not broken. You were just sold a lie. This book is not about managing time better. It's about realizing that time was never manageable in the first place. And weirdly, once you accept that, life gets lighter, calmer, slightly funnier. Like realizing you've been trying to swim upstream for years and you can just stop. So let's talk about why modern time management makes us miserable. Why the feeling of never having enough time is not a personal failure, and why accepting your limits might be the most freeing thing you ever do. And yes, along the way, we'll gently roast productivity gurus, lovingly, respectfully, but still. Section 1. The cruel joke of modern time management. Here's the basic problem. We live in the most efficient era in human history. You can send a message across the world instantly. You can automate half your job. You can learn a new skill from your couch in pajamas. You can order groceries, dates, furniture, and existential dread from the same app. So logically, you should feel relaxed. But instead, you feel rushed. That's not an accident. Burkeman opens with a brutal observation. The more efficient we become, the more overwhelmed we feel. Every new productivity tool promises relief, but somehow just raises the bar for what counts as keeping up. Inbox Zero didn't free you. It just created inbox anxiety. Task managers didn't calm your mind. They just made you aware of how many things you are not doing. The fundamental assumption behind time management culture is this. If you can just organize your time correctly, you'll finally feel in control of your life. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You will never feel in control of your time because control was never on the table. Every efficiency gain creates more expectations. You reply faster, so now people expect instant replies. You do tasks quicker, so now you get more tasks. You save time, and somehow it fills itself back up like a bathtub with a broken drain. Burkeman calls this the efficiency trap, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Imagine a factory that doubles its output. Does it relax and celebrate? No. It ramps up production targets. That's exactly what happens to your personal life. You finish one thing early and immediately feel guilty for not starting the next thing sooner. Productivity didn't fail because you used it wrong. It failed because it was built on a fantasy. Section 2. The fantasy of someday. Most people are living their lives in deferred mode. Someday, when things calm down, I'll relax. Someday, when I'm caught up, I'll focus on what matters. Someday, when I have more time, I'll start living properly. That day never comes. Burkeman points out something quietly devastating. The feeling that life hasn't really started yet is not a temporary phase. It's the default setting of modern life. We're always preparing for the real thing, always laying groundwork, always optimizing for a future that keeps moving further away. And here's the kicker. Even if you did get on top of everything, even if you had the perfect system, you would still face the same problem. There are more meaningful things you could do with your life than you have time to do. That's not pessimism. That's math. You cannot read every book worth reading. You cannot build every relationship worth having. You cannot pursue every passion that sparks your interest. And yet, productivity and culture keeps whispering, maybe you can. That whisper is exhausting. The truth Berkman keeps circling is this: your life is defined by what you choose to neglect, not in a dramatic self-help poster way, in a practical, unavoidable way. Every yes is a no to something else. Every choice closes doors, and no amount of clever planning changes that. Once you accept this, something strange happens. The pressure eases because you stop trying to win a game that cannot be won. Section 3. You are not behind. Time is just finite. Let's talk about the guilt. That constant low-level hum of guilt that follows you around. The sense that you should be doing something else right now. Something more important. Something more productive. Something that future you will thank you for. Berkman argues that this guilt is not a sign of moral failure. It's the inevitable result of having limited time in an infinite world of possibilities. You feel behind because there is literally no way to be caught up. Once you really accept that, the guilt starts to lose its grip. Not all at once. This isn't magic, but gradually. Instead of asking, how do I do everything? You start asking, what am I willing to let go of? That question is uncomfortable, but it's also honest. Most time management advice avoids this question because it feels defeatist. Berkman walks straight into it. You are going to fail at most things. You will not live up to most of your potential. You will abandon many good ideas. You will disappoint some people. You will leave things undone. And that's not tragic. That's life. The tragedy is spending your limited weeks pretending otherwise. Section 4. Why embracing limits feels scary, but works. Here's where the book becomes surprisingly comforting. We tend to think limits are the enemy. If only we had more time, more energy, more discipline, more focus, then life would finally open up. But Berkman flips this around. Limits are what make meaning possible. If you had infinite time, nothing would matter. You could always do it later. Choices would lose their weight. Commitment would be meaningless. Scarcity is what gives decisions their gravity. Choosing one thing means letting others go. That hurts. But it also makes the chosen thing matter. This is why trying to keep all options open is so draining. It's a refusal to commit to being one specific person with one specific life. And here's the uncomfortable but freeing truth. You already are one specific person with one specific life. You just haven't stopped fighting it yet. Accepting your limits doesn't shrink your life. It sharpens it. Section 5. The productivity myth nobody wants to say out loud. Let's address the elephant in the planner. Productivity culture quietly assumes that your worth is tied to output. Do more, achieve more, optimize more, improve yourself relentlessly. And if you're tired, that's a you problem. Berkman doesn't say productivity is useless. He says it's been given a job it can't do. Productivity can help you do things more efficiently. It cannot tell you which things are worth doing. That's a philosophical problem, not a logistical one. And when you treat it like logistics, you end up rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. The ship being your time. What actually matters in life is not whether you got through your to-do list. It's whether the things you chose to do were aligned with what you care about. That requires judgment, not optimization. And judgment requires accepting trade-offs, which brings us to one of the book's most important ideas. Section 6. The courage to disappoint. This might be one of the most quietly radical parts of the book. If you try to avoid disappointing anyone, you will end up disappointing yourself. Time is finite. Requests are infinite. Expectations multiply. Someone will always want something from you. Saying yes to everything is not kindness. It's avoidance. Berkman argues that a meaningful life requires the courage to disappoint people in small, manageable ways instead of disappointing yourself in one massive, lifelong way. That might mean replying slower, turning down opportunities, letting people think you are less impressive, letting some things fall apart, not because you don't care, but because you do. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming realistic. You cannot be everything to everyone, and trying to be will cost you the chance to be something real to anyone, including yourself. Section 7. Why busyness is not a badge of honor. We need to talk about busyness. Being busy has become a social signal, a way of saying, I matter, I'm in demand, my time is valuable. But Berkman points out something quietly sad. Busyness often functions as avoidance. If you're always busy, you never have to face bigger questions. Questions like, is this the life I actually want? Am I spending my weeks on things that matter to me? Who would I be without all this activity? Stillness is scary because it invites reflection, and reflection might demand change. So we fill every moment, not because we're productive, but because we're uncomfortable. The irony is that a life crammed with activity can feel strangely empty, not because you didn't do enough, but because you never stopped to choose. Section 8. You cannot optimize your way out of being human. This might be the heart of the book. Modern culture treats being human as a problem to be solved. We want to eliminate uncertainty, remove discomfort, engineer happiness, hack focus, optimize joy. But human life is messy by nature. You will feel doubt. You will waste time. You will make mistakes. You will care about things that don't make sense on paper. Trying to engineer yourself out of that just creates more frustration. Berkman's message is not give up. It's give in. Give in to the fact that you are finite, limited, imperfect, mortal. And paradoxically, that surrender creates more peace than control ever did. Part 2. Why planning your whole life is a trap. Let's talk about planning. Not reasonable planning. Not, I should probably buy groceries this week planning. I mean life planning. The kind where you zoom out, squint at the future, and try to map the rest of your existence like it's a military operation. 5-year plans. 10-year visions. The version of yourself you are supposedly becoming. Berkman is gentle but firm here. This impulse makes sense. It feels responsible, mature, serious. It is also quietly delusional. Not because planning is evil, but because life is not stable enough to obey your plans. The future is not a blank space waiting for your intentions. It is a moving target that changes shape every time you take a step toward it. The more seriously you take long-term planning, the more brittle your life becomes. Because every unexpected turn starts to feel like a failure instead of a fact. And life is very good at unexpected turns. You meet someone you did not plan for. You lose interest in something you once loved. Your priorities shift. Your energy changes. Your circumstances rearrange themselves without asking permission. Planning assumes continuity. Life specializes in interruption. Berkman's point is not that you should drift aimlessly. It is that rigid attachment to a future version of yourself can blind you to the life you are actually living. You end up sacrificing real moments for imagined ones. And the imaginary version never shows up on time. Section 9. The subtle cruelty of goals. This part might sting a little. We are taught that goals give life meaning, direction, motivation. Berkman does not say goals are useless. He says they come with a hidden cost no one talks about. When your happiness depends on reaching a future state, the present becomes a problem to be solved instead of a place to live. Life becomes a waiting room. You endure now so you can arrive later. And when you finally reach the goal, 2 things usually happen. First, the satisfaction is shorter than expected. Second, a new goal immediately replaces it. The finish line keeps moving because the brain adapts faster than ambition. Even worse, goals subtly train you to see large portions of your life as mere preparation. The years before the promotion, the years before financial stability, the years before confidence, the years before you finally feel like yourself. Those years are not rehearsals. They are your life. Berkman suggests something radical. Instead of organizing your life around outcomes, organize it around practices. Not what do I want to achieve, but what kind of things do I want to spend my time doing, even if they never lead anywhere impressive? That shift changes everything. Section 10. Choosing commitments that close doors. Here is another uncomfortable truth. A meaningful life requires irreversible choices. That sentence alone makes modern culture nervous. We like optionality, flexibility, keeping doors open, not being boxed in. But open doors come with a cost. They demand constant evaluation, constant comparison, constant second guessing. When everything is possible, nothing feels solid. Berkman argues that committing to something, even imperfectly, is what gives life texture. Relationships deepen because you stay, not because you optimize. Skills develop because you persist, not because you dabble endlessly. Meaning emerges because you accept constraints, not because you avoid them. Closing doors feels scary because it means accepting loss, but refusing to close doors means never fully entering any room. You cannot live every version of your life. You only get one draft. And weirdly, that limitation is what makes the draft worth reading. Section 11. Presence is not mindfulness marketing. When people hear be present, they often roll their eyes. Candles, apps, calm voices telling you to breathe. Another thing you are failing at. Berkman strips presence of its branding. Presence is not a state you achieve. It is a consequence of accepting that this moment is all you have access to. You are always here. The question is whether you are mentally arguing with reality or participating in it. Much of our anxiety comes from trying to live in an imagined future where everything is resolved. Presence feels threatening because it removes that escape hatch. If you accept that now is it, you cannot postpone your attention indefinitely. That sounds heavy, but it is also freeing. You stop waiting for life to begin. You notice what is already happening. Section 12. Why distraction feels comforting. Distraction is not just temptation. It is relief. It gives you a break from the weight of choice, from the discomfort of limits, from the awareness that time is passing. Berkman does not shame distraction. He explains it. Scrolling, binging, staying busy, filling silence. These are not moral failures. They are coping mechanisms. The problem is not that we distract ourselves sometimes. It is that we use distraction to avoid engaging with life at all. Presence demands courage. Distraction demands nothing. And modern life offers infinite ways to opt out. Choosing presence is not about eliminating distraction. It is about noticing when you are using it to avoid something important. That noticing alone changes the relationship. Section 13. The relief of being done. Here is one of the most quietly comforting ideas in the book. You do not need to finish everything. You need to decide what you are done with. Not everything unfinished is a failure. Some things are simply not your responsibility. Berkman talks about the relief that comes from consciously abandoning certain ambitions. Not because they were bad, but because they were costing too much. You are allowed to quit things that no longer fit. You are allowed to leave some ideas unexplored. You are allowed to say, this is enough. Enough is a radical word in a culture built on more. Section 14. Mortality as a focusing tool. The title of the book sounds grim until you sit with it. 4,000 weeks is not meant to terrify you. It is meant to clarify you. Knowing that time is limited forces priorities to surface. You stop asking what is impressive and start asking what is meaningful. You stop optimizing and start choosing. You stop postponing and start participating. Mortality is not the enemy of joy. It is the condition that makes joy possible. If everything lasted forever, nothing would matter. Section 15. A calmer definition of a good life. Berkman never gives you a neat checklist. That would defeat the point. But the shape of a good life emerges anyway. A good life is not one where you conquer time. It is one where you make peace with it. It is a life where you accept trade-offs without constant resentment, where you choose a few things and let the rest go, where you show up imperfectly instead of waiting to be ready, where you stop treating yourself like a problem to be fixed. It is not flashy. It will not impress everyone. It will not fit neatly on a resume, but it will feel real. Part 3. Living like a finite human in an infinite world. Up to now, this book has mostly been about unlearning. Unlearning the idea that you can get on top of everything. Unlearning the belief that productivity will save you. Unlearning the fantasy that your real life starts later. Now Berkman turns towards something more practical. Not hacks, not systems, not morning routines that require monk levels of discipline. Just ways of living that actually fit the reality of being human. Finite, limited, mortal, slightly confused, doing our best. Section 16. Doing fewer things on purpose. Here is the quiet shift Berkman keeps pointing to. Stop asking how to do more. Start asking what you are willing to do less of. Most people frame their lives around expansion. More projects, more goals, more growth, more options. But expansion without subtraction leads to overload. A meaningful life is not built by adding endlessly. It is shaped by deliberate reduction. This feels wrong at first because it sounds like settling, but it is not settling. It is choosing. Choosing to invest your attention somewhere instead of smearing it thin across everything. You cannot care deeply about 50 things. You can care deeply about a few. And caring deeply requires letting go of the rest. Section 17. The myth of the perfect moment. One of the most persistent lies we tell ourselves is this. I'll start when things calm down. Berkman is blunt here. Things do not calm down. Life does not hand you a clean, quiet window where everything aligns and you finally feel ready. There will always be unfinished tasks, always background noise, always uncertainty. Waiting for the perfect moment is just another way of postponing life. The truth is simpler and harder. You begin in the middle. Messy conditions, incomplete clarity, imperfect energy. That is not a flaw. That is the human condition. Section 18. Small commitments beat grand visions. We love big plans because they feel meaningful. Write the book. Change careers. Transform your life. Become someone new. Berkman suggests a different approach. Instead of asking what huge transformation you want, ask what small commitment you are willing to honor repeatedly, not someday. This week, a weekly walk, a regular conversation, a modest creative practice, a boundary you actually keep. Big visions collapse under their own weight. Small commitments survive contact with reality, and over time, they quietly reshape your life. Not dramatically, not impressively, but sustainably. Section 19. Why consistency is more humane than intensity. Intensity is celebrated. Hustle. Grind. All in. But intensity burns out quickly. Consistency respects limits. Doing something imperfectly but repeatedly beats doing it perfectly once. Berkman reframes consistency as kindness to your future self. You stop asking yourself to be superhuman and start working with the energy you actually have. That alone reduces an enormous amount of self-resentment. Section 20. Rest is not a reward. This one hits close to home for a lot of people. Rest is treated as something you earn. Finish enough work, then you can relax. But the work never ends. So rest keeps getting postponed. Berkman argues that rest is not the opposite of productivity. It is a prerequisite for being alive. If you wait until everything is done, you will never rest. Choosing to rest means accepting that some things will remain unfinished. That is not laziness. That is reality. Section 21. The emotional cost of treating life like a project. When you turn your entire existence into a self-improvement project, something subtle happens. You start relating to yourself as a problem. Every flaw becomes a task. Every discomfort becomes something to optimize away. This creates constant low-level dissatisfaction because no project is ever complete. Berkman invites you to consider a different relationship with yourself, not manager to employee, not critic to performer, but participant to life. You are not here to be perfected. You are here to live. Section 22. Letting life be slightly unfinished. One of the book's most freeing ideas is this: life does not need to feel resolved to be meaningful. Loose ends are not failures. They are evidence that you are alive. You will leave conversations unfinished. You will not reach closure on everything. You will not feel complete. That is not something to fix. It is something to accept. Completion is for projects. Life is ongoing. Section 23. Why meaning comes from limitation. It is tempting to think that freedom means unlimited choice, but unlimited choice is paralyzing. Meaning comes from commitment, from staying, from choosing this life instead of endlessly imagining others. Once you accept that this is your life, not a rehearsal, it becomes easier to inhabit it fully. You stop scanning for alternatives. You start showing up. Section 24. A gentler relationship with time. Berkman's ultimate invitation is simple. Stop fighting time. Stop trying to dominate it. Stop trying to outrun it. Stop treating it like an enemy. Time is not something you manage. It is something you experience. And the quality of that experience depends less on efficiency and more on acceptance. Section 25. What to do with your 4,000 weeks. So, what do you actually do with all this? You stop waiting. You choose a few things. You accept the cost of those choices. You let the rest go. You show up imperfectly. You rest without guilt. You live with unfinished business. And you remember that no amount of optimization will save you from being human. But accepting that fact might just save your life from feeling wasted.